Hey, John.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, good. Good, good.
I can see you too, so that's good.
Yeah, so far technology hasn't failed us.
Always a good thing.
Yeah.
How are things going?
No, good. Busy. I to get today off, and it works out good that I can do this without having to cram it into work schedule. But I've been doing tax information and stuff this time of year.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna run and get a piece of paper to take some
Yeah,
notes. I'll be right back.
yeah, sure. Berta.
Hello.
Hey, Roberta, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
After tonight, that you'll probably get to relive that Jeep picture.
Yeah, we've been trying to stay off it as much as possible.
Yeah. My daughter lives in Massachusetts and she's pregnant, and she wanted to come up here and have her baby shower at her friend's camp at Beach Hill Pond.
Mm.
And I said, you got to check the road before you schedule that. And
Yeah.
my wife and I took a run out just to be sure. And it's about 8 miles of one lane only with snowbanks on each side.
Uh,
Like, yeah, I don't think you want your friends in their Jettas to be going out to this area.
mm.
So had to be the whistleblower and say, find another plan.
Especially multiple vehicles at this time of year.
We went out with the truck, and I'm like, I told the wife, I said, don't take your car. You're going to chew the wheels all up getting it stuck. And,
Mm.
but so I did get the thank you. I think you helped make the right call. So that was rewarding.
Hmm.
Main winners.
Yeah. We've been parking our car out at the neighbors and walking out to it and walking back in with groceries, or if we got fuel cans or something, David takes the tractor out with a luggage rack on the back, picks them up.
Right.
And we're trying to stay off it most of the time. We put up a cone marker with a sign saying, warning, it's a Class E crime to damage a public easement. And I was careful. I didn't put it right in the middle of the road. I put it far enough to one side so somebody could drive past it. So they can't really say we're obstructing the road.
Right. Sadly, though, in today's world, that's a challenge, not a
Mm.
deterrent. But
Well, we saw where one vehicle had turned around and gone out again without challenging it. So
well, that's good.
Hopefully, like with the new laws, when they go into effect that we pass, the towns will start closing the roads to public traffic. So then just those who live on it, right? That way your road hopefully maybe will stay in better condition. I know on my road we have patches that are pretty bad for the dirt. So they started putting down granite, like dust,
mm,
and that seems to have solidified the road at the top, but the bottom is still a nightmare to go down that hill, and it's just all the water collects, and it's
mm.
really fun.
Mhm.
Mud season. Still looking forward to going home tonight.
Yeah, exactly.
We have to remember if we're going out that if we might be back after dark, we want to bring a flashlight or a headlamp with us because we're going to have to walk in.
Yeah.
Crazy how much, because I live on a discontinued road too. And
Really.
from last week until about middle of March, they won't let the garbage truck come down the road. We
Mm.
have to lug our trash to the end of the road. And I got a nice parcel of land and I pay healthy taxes. And I'm like, yeah, this is nice to pay this and still lug the trash to the road.
What road are you on, if I can ask?
It's the old Kennebec Road is what it's called. And I did check into it. I appreciate the knowledge I've got out of this committee because I went to the town office and found out that they did retain a recreational easement from my driveway to the Newburgh line, which is where I end
Hmm.
ownership. Then my brother-in-law takes over, but it's Hamden. So he checked into it, and they don't have any such record of what they did on their end. So it's ugly.
Hmm.
Hey, Chris.
I just found another map site that allows you to pull things up in 3D or LiDAR, which would be extremely useful, except that they've only got 2 maps from our area, and they're like 1940 or something or other. So I've got to explore it more and see if they've got more maps for other areas.
Sure.
They posted one that people could look at for free just to see what the site will do. It's for Grand Canyon in 1902 or something like that. And it's really neat. I can pull up the 3D and cruise around and see how it's all folded this way and that.
Well,
I think the only person we're waiting for is Matt.
Mhm.
Amanda said she wasn't going to be able to make it. So we'll give him another 5 minutes or so, and then we can start the meeting if that's okay with you guys.
Mhm.
I'm going to hold you guys up. I know you guys all have other things to get done today. So,
Too bad is Amanda isn't going to make it.
yeah. Yeah, I think she's really busy. So it sounds like running around with everything. So
I can relate to that.
I'm sure you can.
It's been particularly challenging the last couple of weeks. David lost his service dog.
Oh, I'm so sorry. That was such a sweet dog, Roberta. That
Yeah,
must be so hard on you guys.
he was only 5.5, and he came down with some mysterious malady that the vet couldn't figure out. And halfway through it, the symptoms changed, and within 36 hours, he was gone.
Oh, I'm so
Vet doesn't know what
sorry.
caused it. But of course, being David's PTSD dog, he was with him 24 hours a day. I mean, every minute he was right there with him. So now every time we turn around, he's not there.
Yeah,
So it's been really rough on David.
I bet.
Is he gonna get another dog, Roberta?
No, we've got our eyes on another one. We thought he was going to be shipped up to Vermont a couple of weeks ago, and then they said no, he had some health issues they wanted to check on and make sure he's 100% before they send him. And then he was supposed to come up last weekend. They canceled because of the snow. So apparently the shipment starts in Texas and makes a number of stops along the way, and then we have to meet them in Vermont to pick him up.
Does he get them through any organization or anything for veterans? Or
We may get a discount or some kind of grant money towards it, but he's not a trained service dog. We trained the last 2 we had,
yeah,
and they both. Well, you saw what kayak was like.
yep.
So hopefully this one, he seems to have the right temperament and everything. We were looking at one, and the manager of the shelter said, "No, if you're looking for a service dog, I've got one that would work out better for you." So taking her advice on it.
Yep. Yeah, it's tough to lose a dog, man. I'm a dog guy myself, and it's tough. It's a hole that's left behind for a long time.
Mhm. And as our daughter says, some people say you shouldn't get another animal right away because that's just putting a Band-Aid on the wound. But yes, I need a Band-Aid on the wound.
Exactly. Yeah. And the reality is those dogs will never make up for the other dog, but it helps.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, each dog is different. The one we had
Yeah.
before was, looked almost a dead ringer for the one we had last, but totally different temperament, but both took right to what they were supposed to do and figured out what David needed, and they just did it.
I'm going out on a limb here. Chris's office looks pretty state oriented, but Matt's, I don't know about that. That can't be a state office.
No, I had a remote site I had to look at. There was a snowmobile club complaining about the distance between two rocks that we have stationed up here in Solon. So right below the Solon Dam. So I had to go stop and look at them and measure them and have a couple Teams meetings this afternoon. So I figured I'd work from home today, but I don't know. I don't know how far they need to be width-wise, but they're like a tiny bit over 10 feet right now.
You know what's
I guess
funny?
that's not wide enough for the drag. So
You know what's funny about that is those rocks came up. If it's the same spot right by the dam, I was talking oversized ATV stuff with the Norway Snowmobile Club this weekend, and they said that they have a couple guys that have wider machines they're legal, but they said that that would keep the bigger ones in check, he thought. And I'm like, well, I was like, that's kind of funny.
maybe, I don't know, maybe I went and looked at the wrong rocks, but I went and looked at them right between the Solon Dam gate on the south end and the fish hatchery there. And there was like a little ways down, there were these rocks that it does look like a groomer had hit the side of it or scraped it a couple times. But I mean, I don't know. Joe always made it sound like if things are 10 feet wide, that should be good enough. But
I would think.
The advisory council said we weren't going to grant groomers wider than 10 feet. So I would think that would be appropriate, but
yeah. Well, it's like exactly 10 feet. So maybe that's the problem. I don't know. But
yeah.
All right, so should we call this meeting to order?
Sure.
And I see John, Roberta, Chris, and Matt, and Amanda Egan is unable to attend today's meeting. So I think we need to have a discussion on item 1 and how you guys want to investigate it, how you want to proceed. Does anyone want to start?
I guess I'll start a little bit, just from our perspective. Like, it's been very confusing, and we really don't have anything to go on from the enforcement side when we get complaints from landowners or clubs, as to who actually does have the right to give permission for a recreational trail, whether that's snowmobile or ATV. I know that, like, we talked about, I think we put in there that it was ATV specifically on the thing, but we should add snowmobiles to that because it's all recreational vehicle types. It's not just the snowmobiles. So if we could come to some type of like something that we could pass on, that they could put in legislature, that would be, this is who needs to get permission. The problem is, like, I had one up in Emden, North Anson this year, and there were like 14 at least landowners on this discontinued road, and there were camp owners up in there from Massachusetts that wanted the snowmobile trail, and then there were 2 or 3 that had moved in there since COVID with their campers, and now that they thought that they had this quiet piece up there, that they were not going to be like disturbed. And unfortunately, the way it was, the club did a good job. They said, you know what, we're not gonna upset the apple cart. But I'm sitting there looking at it, and there's actually landowners in there that do want it. So is it a majority? Is it a minority? Those are the questions that I have, that there's really no, and I'm sure Matt's the same way. Like, where do we go? Like, who is to give us this answer? I have one that came up this past weekend in Norway, actually. Matt, I don't know if you're familiar with the one over there in Norway, but there was it's a winter maintenance road. The town actually does own it and does the maintenance on it, but they had somebody that moved in there also into a camper since COVID, and they started plowing up a berm, and the club was having a hard time with them. It's actually a weird situation where the abutter on the other side owns a large amount of land. So they could probably put the trail through there, but the town had given them permission, And obviously like a winter maintenance road, it's a little bit different, but needless to say, it would be nice to come to some type of resolution as to how we can do this and make everybody happy in the end.
So
That's
how are
fine.
you guys? Sorry, so just a quick question, just so I can kind of just kind of bring it all in. So how do you guys handle it now if it's an abandoned and discontinued road? Is it if the town gives permission, or is it just kind of like you guys are still unsure because it's not really clarified?
We're
that
very,
those-
very unsure, basically, unless there's
Uh-huh.
a complaint that comes up. And we'll try to work with people on, hey, maybe we can push it off the side of the road onto a landowner and get it off the road completely. Or we'll work with the landowners on say, hey, like we had one where we actually put fencing on half of the road. And I mean, that's not a solution. That's just that's an aggravation because
Uh-huh.
I mean, like someone's going to think that that's just a divider between the two lanes.
Yeah, I would, because I'd be like, what?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that was primarily to appease the landowner, correct?
Right,
Not the town,
right,
which gave the right of way.
right. It's a complex issue. I mean, I understand that there's landowners that
Mm.
don't want them, but then in those situations where there's like, and then it's like, I mean, Roberta knows this better than anybody, but like the idea that someone owns the actual road, but then over the top of that, you could hover over it. It just boggles my mind as to where do we come to some type of resolution as to who has the final say and how is it fair, I guess. Because if there's like 14 camp owners and 11 of them want the trail to come through, why is it that 2 landowners can shut them down? Why is it that that's the majority that gets, and they can't have it? Does it have to be a majority? Does it have to be, is it a minority? I mean, that's the question I've always had. But from us, from the landowner relation side, it is very difficult because we are trying to appease like both sides, but there is no, I can't give someone an answer, I guess is the best way of putting it.
When you said it's a winter maintenance road, do you mean it's closed to winter maintenance or that they plow it in the winter?
No, close to winter maintenance. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll be honest too, from the other side of it, and this committee's probably the worst one to suggest this to, but a lot of times the clubs haven't done as concrete a work as they had. They've just had, the town let us use that for 30 years.
Mhm.
So that gets ambiguous, especially when they trade presidents and trail masters throughout the years. Well, we just always have used that, and there is no clarity. So new people coming in are uneducated on how to get to that point. We need to, in my opinion, get to the point where the town takes a hold of it and says this is a right of way for A, B, or C, if that's at all possible. But it's how do you get to that point?
I guess to that point too, John, is if it has been done correctly and it's been like that for 30 years and someone moves in there, like if it's, and they change their mind, like where are we going to be at? Like if it's been,
Exactly.
Yeah, that kind of gets into what should be disclosed to a landowner when they buy a piece of property.
right.
And I kind of had a bunch of examples that I wanted to give. First of all, like you said, MMA talks about the layer cake that the landowner owns the dirt under the road, but the public owns the easement over the road. So which one gets to say, which one is the owner for the purpose of saying that it can be an ATV trail or not? And what we say is that, okay, if you can use your easement over the top without touching the dirt or disturbing it, then fine, no problem. Although we have some people who would argue that because they don't like the noise of them going over. And if it were a hovercraft, that would probably be even noisier. But we keep saying that whoever is going to use a road or an easement or whatever needs to be providing sufficient maintenance to support that use. And when they don't, that's where a lot of the big problems come in. Let's see, one example.
Which Roberta, I think probably Matt could talk to you better than I can, but I mean the trail funds and everything like that, and what the clubs get for money for support on that for the trail system would be paying for that.
Yeah, I'll get into where that can be a problem too in a minute. An example that's been in the news recently is the Beaver Ridge Road in Freedom. A couple bought the land in 1991, and they asked the town what the status of the road was, and one of the town officials told them, "Oh yeah, that road was discontinued way back. There is no easement on it. It is your private property. Feel free to post it, put up no trespassing signs on it or whatever." And they backed it up with a letter from Maine Municipal Association saying, yes, that road is discontinued back before they kept easements. It is your private property. And they went ahead and raised their family there, raised their kids. And as I said, that was 1991 that they bought it. It wasn't until 2003 that we started having laws regulating ATVs, because there weren't that many of them around before then. So they bought it under one understanding, and then along come the ATVs. Well, that road hasn't been maintained for any kind of traffic since 1950s or earlier. And this couple had built the part of the road that they needed to get to where they're building their house, and then just let the rest of it continue to deteriorate. And now all of a sudden there's a big hoopla because people want to be able to use it as a snowmobile trail, ATV trail, whatever. And the landowners are saying, if you want to use it for walking trail, biking, horseback riding, we're okay with that. You know, we thought it was our private property, but if you insist that it's a public easement, we're okay with non-motorized use. But the motorized use is a problem. And because the people have been so irate about it, there have been certain ones who have felt that the best way to prove they have a right is to go in there and tear it up. And they've made a point, if they meet the landowners when they're out on the road, they make a point of splashing through the puddles at high speed, revving their engines, chewing it up, giving them the finger. That's not the way to make friends and influence people. And unfortunately, that's what they have done to try to prove that they have use of it. Then there's another example is there was a farmer in China who had used a discontinued road for years to get back and forth between his various fields and woodlots, et cetera, with his tractors. And then the snowmobile club kindly rebuilt the bridge with a bridge that won't hold up his tractors. So after that, he had to take the long way around. It meant taking his tractors and his equipment out on the main roads and going several miles further than he could have gone if he could just cut through the discontinued road on his property, as he always had. And you think about it, with, say you have a hay field, that means you're going to be going over with probably a tractor and a seeder, possibly multiple trips with manure spreaders to fertilize the fields. Then there's a tractor with a mower, tractor with a tedder, tractor with a rake, tractor with a baler, multiple trips with hay wagons, and then do that again for the second cut. That's a lot.
You sound like you farmed before.
Yeah. Yeah, we do our own hay.
Okay, I was gonna say, seem to know a little bit about
So
that.
you add a few miles and double it for a round trip each time. That adds to the farmer's expenses and wear and tear on his equipment. And it also is a hazard for the public because now there are slow moving vehicles out on the main road. So that's one way that it can be a problem if the ATV club gets to decide that, or the snowmobile club gets to decide this is going to be a trail. Another similar example, someone bought a seasonal home in Rumford. And the realtor says, oh, but we advertised it as a seasonal home. You should have known that he couldn't get there in the winter. And we advertised that it was that there was access to the ATV trails and snowmobile trails. And they also advertised using Title 23, Section 3121, that this was a private road with maintenance shared by the abutters. Well, we got digging into it and we found that the part that the house is on isn't actually a private road. It's a road that was discontinued or the public easement retained. And the part that you have to travel over to get to that part of the road was discontinued with no easement. So it all became private property. It's totally landlocked because you can't get there. But the public has continued to use it anyway. So you might be able to argue for a public prescriptive easement. But what happened was that he bought the property thinking, well, they said it's a seasonal camp because it isn't winterized. I'll winterize it. He didn't realize that there's no access during the winter because it becomes a snowmobile trail and you can't drive a vehicle on a snowmobile trail. On top of that, he went to check with the other landowners to see if they were going to pitch in on the maintenance. It turns out one of the landowners is a logger who has already cut off his land and has no interest in fixing the road because he's done. One of the landowners is a Boy Scout troop that owns a piece of land they haven't visited in 12 years. And the last landowner is the town, who has no obligation to maintain it because it's a public easement. So he's on his own for maintenance. Well, then the ATV club came in and let's see, can I share my screen, Heather?
You should be able to. I
See
believe
if
I
it's
gave
right.
permission. Hold on, let me see.
It looks like
I have it checked, so you should be all set too.
So the ATV club replaced a bridge. Can you see that
Yes.
coming up? Yeah, they replaced the bridge and they put up barricades on both sides to keep anybody from going off the bridge. But it's not wide enough for things like a propane truck or lumber delivery or fire equipment. And this guy wanted to live there year round. So he ended up selling it and being a little clearer to the buyer that you better know what you're getting here. But meanwhile, he had dreams of that being his permanent home. Let's see, I've also got some pictures of the road in Freedom. I think I've got those up here. Yeah, here we go. This one comes up. Okay, yeah, this is what they've done to the road in Freedom. There's places where they've torn ruts in it. Of course, the ruts hold water. There's no drainage to get that water off of the road. And if you're out there trying to walk it on foot, you better have your high waders on because there are places where the puddle goes all the way across the road. We tried to walk it and we got just so far and then we had to turn around and go back because we didn't have rubber boots on. Didn't want to get our sneakers soaked.
You wouldn't take a propane truck there.
No.
Roberta, is that doesn't look like an ATV trail or anything. That just looks like an old tote road.
Well, the dispute on that one is that that's the one in Freedom where the owners had been told that it was their private property and they could post it and keep everybody off. And then somebody somewhere along changed their mind and said, oh no, that's always been a public road. The discontinuance order is ambiguous because the wording is really weird. It says the road is to be discontinued but kept as a public way forever. Well, if it's either it's discontinued or it isn't discontinued, and either it's a public road or it isn't a public road. So
that was the town that did that.
Some of the residents of the town dug it up and started arguing about it, and the town has kind of sided with the people that want access, even though previous town officials had told them that there wasn't any access.
Is that Matt? Do you know? Is that currently an ATV trail? Because that does not look like an ATV trail to me. Oh, Matt's still there.
I don't know. I'd have to pull up my GIS and see. I can try and pull it up real quick. But
Roberta, is that the one that recently just got the town decided they're not going to settle? They're going to continue on to court?
Yep.
Yeah,
there was a stipulated agreement that was worked out in mediation that would have given the public a right for non-motorized uses, in spite of the fact that the landowners had been told that it was their private property. And, for all these years, they've had their peace and quiet in there. And now people are saying, oh, we've always used that road, so it's still a road. And as I said, their use of it has been disrespectful, to say the least. And that's where a lot of the problem comes. If they had agreed that, we'll be quiet, we won't rev our engines going past your house, and we'll take care of the trails, then they might have been welcome there. But
if we get anybody to agree to that, Roberta, everybody revs their engine when they come by my house.
You don't have quiet zones that you can post or anything like that?
It's Watson Heights Road in Fayette. They come up the hill when they're coming up the hill with a diesel truck. What does it sound like? I can hear them.
Part of that's probably because they know it's Chris McCabe's house too.
Yeah,
I say it's a challenge for me.
yeah,
I do it in a state vehicle.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we have, I think, just one snowmobiler that when he comes down our road and makes the turn off onto the rest of the trail, when they go around that corner, they go.
He's probably got a can on it. Because now you can, if it's a 4-stroke, you can't even hear it anymore. All you hear is whap, whap, whap on the track.
Yeah, that wouldn't be so bad. Let's see, a couple of other things that come into it. As I said, there's the question of who maintains it. What are they maintaining it for? If they're maintaining it for a snowmobile trail, or if they're maintaining it for an ATV trail, that may not be compatible with the use of somebody who needs it for access to their residence. We had one situation once on our road. The snowmobile trail is only supposed to come down the hill above our house and then turn off. And we had somebody that I don't know where they came from, but they came in from the other end of the road. And my husband was going out plowing, and at the crest of a blind hill met them coming flying up the road, and he didn't see them immediately because with the snowblower, he's putting up so much of a plume of snow in front of him that the visibility wasn't great. Fortunately, they managed to miss each other, but it was kind of scary. So, if it's a plowed road, should there be snowmobiles on it? By law, if it's a private road or a public road plowed privately, it's not supposed to have snowmobiles on it.
It can be the same for a private road too, Roberta. They're not allowed to be on a plowed section of road. That's actually just a violation of law.
Mhm.
We deal with it with the paper companies a lot on private roads.
Yeah, the paper company roads, it'd be scary to have a snowmobile coming down because those log trucks do not go slowly.
And they can't stop when they're loaded.
Yeah, they're kind of like trying to stop a train. Okay, the other thing that I keep bringing up, and Matt, as you're new to the commission here, you'll hear me hammering on this one over and over again. The case of Jordan versus the town of Canton. Back in 1970, there was a law that had been passed in 1968 called the Limited User Highway Law, which said that whenever the selectmen of a town determine that a road is of limited use and value to the traveling public, they can declare it to be a limited user highway. And from that point forward, the public is no longer responsible for maintaining it and is no longer liable for the condition of the road, but it remains a public road and is not discontinued. And anyone can provide maintenance if they wish to on a purely voluntary basis. And it only took 2 years for it to make its way all the way to the Maine Supreme Court. And the court said that a public road with no public maintenance will inevitably be destroyed, and that will destroy property access. And in the absence of just compensation for the loss of access, that is unconstitutional. And the law got repealed. Problem is, we now have public easements. And what's a public easement? It's a public road with no public maintenance. And if you look into the criteria for each one, they're the same. It's basically the same thing as a limited user highway. And we've seen this over and over again, that when the public uses something and doesn't maintain it, it will become impassable if you don't put maintenance into it. I know, Matt, you had said we don't have to maintain it. Well, I disagree with that. If you don't maintain it, it doesn't serve its purpose anymore.
I'm just going to kind of push back on that a little bit, Roberta, because we're actually going to deal with that in Subcommittee 3, which I think that you're on, right? You're on Subcommittee 3 too.
Yeah.
So on this one, I'd like to kind of stay just to like who owns the access and like how we're going to figure that out and the recommendations we're going to make to the legislature on that, if that's okay. Does that make sense? Because we only have like an hour left. And so I'd like to get a little further down the road on that.
One other quick point is
Sure.
that, in my list of complaints that I've gotten from people about roads, I have complaints specifically about ATVs. There are other roads where they've kind of mentioned it in passing as being a problem, but ones where that's been their specific complaint. I have complaints from Amity, Athens, Fayette, Greenville, Guilford, Haynesville, Hebron, Jackson, Liberty, Livermore Falls, Otisfield, Sangerville, Stowe, Thorndike, and Waterboro. So those are all towns where there are discontinued roads that have had problems with ATV use.
And you don't own property in all those towns, right? Just
Oh,
double checking. You don't own property in all those towns, right?
no, just Fayette.
Just check it. Just check.
Can you put that in an email? That's a good statistic for us that are advocating to have.
Well, the only thing I would rebut to that is, Roberta, is that, I mean, I'd like to know if there have been any complaints to the warden service on any of those specifically, because if it's not an ATV trail, that is actually a violation of law for people to be riding there, unless they're an owner of the property or maybe in a butter, and there's a landowner dispute between two neighbors. So my question would be, like, are these issues being dealt with accordingly when it comes to ATV issues? Because if it is a trail, then that's one thing, but if it's not a trail, that's a totally other issue.
That's why I was asking. I'd like to know if there's a club that's maintaining trail in that area,
Right.
and if there's someone be accountable for it.
And then there's the question again of who gets to designate whether it's an ATV trail. How do you know whether it was designated by the proper authority or not, when you don't know who has that control? So I agree with you that that's one of the major issues that needs to be worked out here, is who gets to say.
Yeah, because I mean, honestly, like right now, there is no one that can say.
I don't think that's what we're here to try to come up with a solution to.
Right.
Would the way forward be then to get a list of all the ATV trails and then match it with the abandoned and discontinued roads, and then see if the warden service has gotten complaints, and with Roberta's complaints?
That fact finding, and we could attribute it to spot on, but I mean, some of those complaints may not be ATV
Right.
designated trail.
Well, and then we would know that. And then we
Correct.
could look and see if that's abandoned and discontinued. And then we have a little more data. Matt, do you guys have a designated?
Well, we could
list
do
of
that,
roads?
but
Do you
part
think it's
of
too much?
well, I mean, we can definitely give I don't know. So
Because really, we
the-
really just need to look at the abandoned and discontinued roads. Like, that's all we really have the
Right.
authority to look at. So we could rule out, and I don't know what your search thing is, we could rule out all of those who are not on abandoned and discontinued roads, and then just look at the ones that are abandoned and discontinued roads that run over it. Who gave the permission? Most likely the town.
First
And
off, we'd have to
then,
know what the roads are, because a lot
Yeah.
of those are in question. I mean, like,
Right.
we had a road that was a discontinued abandoned road. I can't remember what town it was in that we were dealing with last year. And the town knew that they had a right to do it. They went through all the documentation, said they had a legal right, but one of the abutting landowners just didn't like that it was there. They moved up from the Florida Keys and said they didn't want stuff there anymore. And the town said, well, sorry, but then they wanted to take him to court. So the town just was like, well, we don't want to spend a ton of money on this. So they just let it go. And the local ATV club was, having a hard time and kind of unhappy because they'd used it for so long. And then all of a sudden these people came up and just dropped in there and said, well, we don't want it. And the town knew that they had a legal right to do it, but they didn't want to waste all the money and time and lawyers' fees.
Yeah.
So, but I think the big problem is with this whole thing is just that we don't know the legal status on a lot of roads, and I think that that's really the thing that has to be cleaned up. Like, that's the thing that really has to drive this whole thing, is just trying to figure out a way to force. I know municipalities would probably call it a unfunded mandate, but I worked for a municipality for 15 years, and I will heavily advocate that it's their duty and responsibility to the taxpayers that they serve. If they did not do things the right way or properly, or like identify how to discontinue it at the time and it wasn't cleaned up, then it's their duty and obligation to do that. And most of them know what the roads are. Most of them know what roads are in question and what the issues are. But so, I mean, finding out who can give the authority and authorization to use it really just comes down to, like, who owns it.
Well, that was the issue we've run into, I think, over the last couple of years. And I'm sure those of you who have been on the commission can speak better, but we tried that. And then we couldn't get we decided to only have unanimity for the things that we put before the legislature. MMA will not sign off. And I think there was one or two other people, and I can't remember. I'd have to go back and look at my notes, because they feel it's an unfunded mandate and nobody has time to do that. And because some of the towns have horrible records. Oh, I'm not trying to throw them under the bus. I'm just saying based on the history of what, and it's a discussion we can have with MMA, but I'm just telling you the history that we have been trying to do this since I was here. 2023 was when I started. So we're 3 years, at least 3 years, maybe you guys started 2022, that fall, into this. And so, in the legislature, I know for a fact, the last time that we had a broken group where we had a majority on some of those, like 10-2, they would not go forward with our recommendation. And we had some issues trying to get things passed, and kind of got thrown under the bus a lot in the meetings.
Well, they wouldn't be able to make any laws if that was the case. I haven't seen any bills go through that are.
I agree with you. I'm just giving you the legislative history of the experience that the commission has had, and why we've kind of hit a roadblock. But I think that is something, it's something we always come back to. I think, it deals with respect of the landowners on the road too. But I just wanted to give you the history because 3 years is a lot, and there's a lot of documentation of meetings that we've had over that. So I just wanted.
I think one of the things too, like to your point, Heather, and like when we were talking, and I don't know how I do agree. I've always thought that the towns need to take some responsibility for this. And if if the town keeps an easement over it, why is it that the abutters say that they own the ground? If the town actually has an easement and they should do, I know Roberta's been there, like a minimum maintenance. And then we say that those abutters don't own to the center line. And then that way the towns could give permission for these trails, and that would cure things up a lot cleaner from our perspective. But that's the big question is when ownership, ATV law is very specific. It says that you cannot operate unless you have landowner permission. Snowmobile law does not, which it can be posted as no trespassing, so then you can't operate there. But if there's not a sign that says that it's not posted or anything like that, you can ride a snowmobile basically wherever you want.
I think the problem that we ran into before, and MMA had said this, and I think Jim had said this too, is that unfortunately, if the town wants to own the roads, they're going to have to pay for them. And none of the towns have, as we know, all our municipalities are strapped for cash. There's maybe a few that aren't, but the majority of them are strapped for cash. So they're not going to be able to come up with the funds to buy the roads outright. So it gets into then the constitutional land rights and things like that. So that was what we were hitting our heads on before too. So it might be that it just needs to be, we put through maybe a couple of recommendations on if you don't want to do this, maybe it's this. And if you don't want to do this, maybe it's that, like what we kind of did for the recommendation of, having a road depository, which they still haven't decided on what they want. And Roberta, did you have your hand raised and want to say something?
Yeah, just to give a little history on why we can't get an inventory through. Years ago, we tried to get a law through that said that towns had to take an inventory of their discontinued roads. And MMA complained at that point that that would cost us an arm and a leg. We don't know where the records are in some cases, or if we do know where the records are, sometimes it's unclear what it means, and you'd have to hire an attorney or possibly even go to court to determine what the status of the road is. Well, in a way, they're correct, but what I keep saying is start with the ones you know, at least do something. And apparently a lot of towns already have. And so my suggestion has been, let's start with the ones we know we have and add to the list as you can. And those towns that have already inventoried their abandoned and discontinued roads, let's put it all in one place where people can find it. And the registries of deeds have said that they would be willing to be the repository for where that list could be. So I think that may be the key to it, is you're not exactly making it optional, because a few years ago, they did actually pass a law that would have required inventories, but at the last minute, MMA got it changed to say that they may inventory their roads, and there was zero response to it, which is kind of weird because there are so many towns that already have done it, but I don't think the word was gotten out very well that, hey, if you've done it, you need to register it. So we do have another committee that's going to be working on that. If we can get that going, then that could work into the next step, which would be maybe in the real estate disclosures. Once that information is available, then the realtors can go to it and say, oh, look, this is a discontinued road, and this is or is not an ATV trail, and maybe make the buyer aware when they purchase a piece of property, this is an ATV trail. You're not going to shut it down just because you're the new guy and don't want it to be an ATV trail. If people know in advance that it's going to be one.
Roberta, to that point though, like, I mean, doesn't that go against the idea that they actually own to the center line on that? Because like, isn't that a right that someone should have? Like, if that is the case that they own to the center line, that they could say, even if they move in when that is a current ATV trail. I mean, I'm just playing devil's advocate here, but like, if you move in there and you're buying the land, like you claim ownership of that. So what's just because they sign on the dotted line when they get a notice that it's an ATV trail, what's to stop them from shutting it down? I don't think right now there's nothing to stop them.
Well, I think the answer to that is that they own the land, but it's subject to the easement over it. It's just like most people don't realize it's the road in front of your house. You probably own the dirt under the road to the center line.
Right.
But that doesn't mean you can tell the traffic that they can't drive by on it because there's a public easement where the road.
But I think to that, the easement should specifically state that it's a snowmobile ATV trail or something like that. Because currently there is nothing like that. They don't say like what type of use. And that comes down to the town, which we know where that's going.
Yeah, that's
So
why
would your recommendation then be to the town or to the legislature that perhaps if the town has a public easement that they have to designate what it's for?
I like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be a big step in the right direction. And then the next step beyond that is once they've designated what it's for, who is going to maintain it for that purpose? If it's the ATV clubs, yeah, I know they have funding for putting some money into ATV trails, but when? Does the resident who needs it every day have to wait until the ATV club can get a hold of the funding and get together a work day? And meanwhile, what are they on foot to go get their groceries until the road is fixed? Or is the ATV club going to be willing to fix it to the point where it could be used as a residential road? And this, like the bridge that I showed before. And so there are a lot of little side trails on it, but I think a good start would be to designate what the purpose of the easement is.
You know, I think part of it, Roberta, with just to clarify a little bit with the ATV, like to what extent do they maintain it? So, you know, like to give you an example, like Weyerhaeuser or AFM or Wagner, we use their properties up in northern Maine on their managed forest lands. And if they have a road that they are using for logging or haul road, they have different requirements for us if we use it. Like sometimes we have to grade it once a year or contribute at least toward that maintenance. Now we don't like build the whole road because it's their road. We don't, pay for all of the maintenance costs of, replacing culverts or anything, but we do a cost share. So, I would say in this sort of situation, it's really like dependent on the club and the road that's there. If you guys saw the road that's coming by your house, if it was like you guys fixed it all up and it was like a nice dirt road and that's what you did and you wanted to do, then the club would probably, in that case, help you keep it to those standards if it was like that was how they were allowed to use it. Now, if there's a public easement and they're just allowed to be there without the owner's permission they don't necessarily need to keep it to a standard all the time, but to be a good neighbor, a lot of the times they do. So sometimes they'll help with annual gradings or if you have typical costs that you're trying to do to it, but it gets really tricky because it really, we're not we're not there to kind of like help build roads for people, but we're there to try and not make things worse than how we found them, I guess is the best way to put it, because we're trying to like do the right thing with, people letting us use the property, and then we kind of try and keep it to the standard that it's been at. So,
that's what we've said all along, is that they need to provide sufficient maintenance to support the public use. So, say we've got a road that we've built up to the point where it's got enough gravel on it to support a passenger car most of the year. And then the ATVs come in, and they're not going to damage it a whole lot if we've got a good gravel road going there, but they're going to take a little bit out of it. And if they could compensate us for that little bit, that would go a long way. Where it gets to be a problem is where you not only have the ATVs using it, but you have mud runners with big 4-wheel drive aggressive tires coming in at the height of mud season and just, using it as their playground. Or where you have a logging company that comes in and, they just want to get their last couple of loads out. And the road stayed above freezing all night, but it dropped to 31 degrees in the morning, so we can get our last load out. And boy, that tears the life out of a road.
But they should be held accountable for that. That's what I've always said. Like if they're
Sure.
doing, if that landowner has hired a contractor to go in there and do that and they tear it up, they should be held accountable for that without a doubt.
I think the problem is that when nobody owns it,
Yeah.
like if it's a public easement and they're saying we have the right to go there, it's like
It's just like everybody else. It's just like, yeah. They're taking the ownership.
Just a fun place to go run, run your mutter, or whatever. But
didn't we get a bill in that made it so we could shut the roads down?
Yes, we did last time. But it goes into effect, I think it was 90 days from when it passed in January. So February, March, so April is when it will go into effect. But yes, we did. We gave the town, well, they already had the authority. They just apparently are unaware of it. Mm-hmm. So we put it into the bill that they would know that they have the authority to be able to close these public easements so they wouldn't be damaged, which I think goes a long way. I think you would want to protect the public resource. I don't think you would want that road to be destroyed. I think you'd want people to be able to use it. So hopefully the towns will start using it. But one of the things I always think about the commission too is I wonder how much outreach we should be doing sometimes with like our stuff with like the towns, or educating them on things that have passed so that they're aware of that. And I don't know if that's something we need to work with MMA on. I know Jim had started working with them on a few things to get things kind of like notifying towns and things like that. So that might be another thing, but we do have that ability they do have the ability to close the roads now. And then I'm actually thinking it might need to be, and it's something we'd have to talk obviously with Amanda about to see the legality of it, but I don't think it would come up as an unfunded mandate to say the town needs to designate what that public easement is being used for. Is it going to be, and then the other problem then is we have the dissonance between when it was discontinued or when it was abandoned, because some of those are public roads and I think that's why Jim wanted to just kind of get one public easement, with what the requirements are. But once again, that was hard to come up with. But maybe it's a step in the right direction to say, the town's going to have to say what you're the county or the state, what that abandoned discontinued road is. What's the public use for it? And then that way, at least it makes it easier for you guys to enforce it. Because really, some of it's enforcement issues. No, you don't think so, Chris?
No, I do. I think it's like,
okay.
Yeah. It's unenforceable currently right now, the way it is. Like the only thing that we can do is like we can criminal mischief for motor vehicles, like causing damage or anything like that, or we can, or ATV law assists us a lot because they're not supposed to be in places where they're not. But if it is a trail system, our hands are kind of tied, and what ends up happening is we get the conflicts of abutters that, like I said, some want it, some don't, and then that's where it really kind of goes south. Like we have people putting up big plowed berms or for snowmobile trails that they legally have a right to do that, and then we talk about landowner liability because we're like, hey, listen, you put up a berm and someone gets hurt, you're gonna own them, like,
Mhm.
or they're gonna own you.
Right.
Matt, this is a question more for you, but when they do their grant application for ATV side or sled side, can you have a checkbox that says this is uh, ARDC road, abandoned or discontinued road section? So we can start collecting an inventory of where these problem areas could be. I know it sounds like a paperwork nightmare, but if it's a town maintained road or a club maintained trail that's not
Right.
discontinued roads, we ought to be able to checkerboard it down to 375 pieces or something like that of all of
So
the
there's no current, like any sort of current mapping for what there is for discontinued abandoned roads anywhere, or is there?
I don't know there is.
It's a crosswork patch of information that Roberta has actually been the one to, I think, mostly collect, right, Roberta? I mean, Roberta has some of the county maps and stuff that she has. She has some of the towns where she has the pins in them. But some of those are still being legislated because the towns are very hesitant to say, yes, this is abandoned or discontinued, as towns are so
Right.
afraid of being sued right now that
Yeah.
anytime somebody says, no, that's not right, we're going to sue you,
Right.
the town's like, okay, you know what, we don't know, we're just going to back off.
Right.
And then other times, like now with some of them, they're like, no, we want this road because enough people are, want this piece. So it's a patchwork, I think. And that's one of the reasons why I think Roberta's really been pushing to have the registry have a list. And I think one of the things that we were working on, and I believe 4, 5, and 6, the committee will do this. We had put together last year, I don't know if you guys remember, a questionnaire for the towns to go out through MMA to see who had a list and who doesn't. And if they had a list, at least it's the beginning, like Roberta said. I think what Jim was worried is that if we use volunteers, it's not paid, they might not have the legal knowledge, it's not a court determining it, and we can run into some issues with that. But if the town has already made those designations or they have it, at least it's something we can start putting in the registry so people are aware, which I think then would help everybody else.
Roberta, from your research and stuff, like how many towns do you think actually have like a good record and have that on file? Do you have any idea?
I really don't know. I know that when MMA did a survey, was it 2017, I think it was, that 40%, 42% or something like that of the towns that responded had already at least begun a survey, but I don't know how many responded. So if you assume that that's a fairly accurate sampling, then maybe 42% of the towns have started an inventory. One of the hesitations I have not made my map of discontinued roads public because I'm afraid that there are mud runners who will say, oh, look, here are all the places we can go and play. So I've kind of, I'm willing to put one pin per town where there are discontinued roads, but not to put a pin on the road where people can identify it. And that may be one of the downsides of having an inventory. Who's going to be able to access that? But my answer to the concern that it's unclear what the legality is of some of these discontinuances, don't try to have volunteers interpret it. Just have them find where the record is. Because then I spend hours sometimes trying to find the record for somebody. And once they've found the record, sometimes you can look at it and say, oh, this very clearly follows the law. Exactly. It says on this date prior to 1965, the road was discontinued. Bang, that means no easement. Or after 1965, it says this road is discontinued. And because it doesn't say there is no easement, yes, there's a public easement. Those are the easy ones. Then there are the ones that have the weird language like, it's discontinued but kept as a public road forever. Well, which is it? Is it discontinued or is it a public road? Don't try to have the volunteers interpret that. Just have them say, here is the book and page where that record can be found. So then when somebody comes in and says, what's the status of this road? You say, well, this is what we have on record. Take this to your attorney. See what he says about it.
Yeah.
I'll have to talk to Amanda about that because she's the attorney to see what her thoughts are if it's different than Jim's. And I don't mind, shooting her an email. after this and getting the thoughts. But my other thought is I think, and I don't know how you guys feel, please feel free to jump in and correct me, but maybe that questionnaire is what we really do need to get out to the towns so we can see. And I'm thinking, I think the public, having the town, county, or state designate what that public easement should be used for would be helpful as a suggestion to the legislature. You know, they don't have to, you know, follow through with that, but I mean, what do you guys think if the town, I don't know, and any other suggestions you guys have that you want to look into? And I obviously have to run it by everybody anyway, so.
I don't know, like, does anybody know, like, the town, like Matt, maybe Matt or Roberta know, but would that have to go to a public vote, I would think, as to what they want for easements on those discontinued roads? That's kind of a question I'm throwing out there. Does anybody know?
I think it would have to. I mean, I don't know. I mean,
That's what
that
I
would be,
would think.
you know, because it's a shared use, but I would,
Having 500.
you know what I mean? But
law.
it wouldn't create an expense, so it wouldn't be a public mandate, is my thought. But it also puts the burden back on the town to kind of be like, hey, what do you want to use this for? You know?
I can't remember which town it is. There is a town, it's near Freedom down that way, but they just they open up all their roads to ATV access routes, and that includes, Roberta probably knows, but
Jackson.
Jackson, and and that's all discontinued roads and everything.
And they even opened all their public roads to ATV trails, which means you have to go along the side of the road. You're going to wear out the shoulders. And there's, you know, questions of public safety with ATVs operating right alongside driven on roads. You know, one thing that needs to be taken into consideration is that the U.S. Constitution says that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby. And anything in the Constitution or laws or of any state of the kind or the any state to the contrary notwithstanding. In other words, if you have a law that doesn't abide by the Constitution, that law is invalid. And so
That means the action was invalid.
So we've got to look at you know, what's been done, whether it violates the Constitution or whether it's in agreement with it. And that's where if you get you know, public use.
Well, I think that's a discussion for the larger commission. I mean, at this point, it's more we're trying to put down what we want to do with the ATVs, I think, and getting it to where it needs to be, like how to give relief to people, I think, on these roads. You know what I mean? And I think for Chris to be able to enforce the law on these roads, I think, you know, to make sure. And maybe it needs to be, is there a mud season where ATVs aren't allowed to run on the trails, Chris, or are they constantly?
Yeah, so we work with, like, Matt's group, they work with the clubs. I mean, we're sending it out right now, trail closures, everything like that, like, and even sending it out to the snowmobile side saying, hey, be respectful, landowners, don't ride these trails because there's dirt sections and all that. But yeah, the trails typically, like, there is no, I mean, Matt, there's really no set date, but we always consider like Memorial Day weekend as like the kind of the kickoff. But I think, well, what's the state trails, Matt? What's the date?
We don't really have a date that we go specifically on. So like the state-owned properties and rail beds, we open up as soon as they're ready. And that's this, you know, the thing too with all the, like, it's state ATV trail system, but it's not really my trail system that I'm in charge of every aspect of it, you know. So like the local clubs are really the people in charge of their club, of their trails. So we don't micromanage every single club to say when they can't open. Now, if a landowner calls, like if Wagner or AFM calls us up and says, hey, John's club is opened up here and they're tearing up all of our stuff, we will, because we hold the license with them, we will definitely call that club up and say, you better stop or else. And we'd probably take some action if they didn't, which is like not give them their grant funding this year or something, but or just tell them that they're not allowed on that property anymore and have one of the large landowners just kind of like kick them off. And then you guys, if you found them back on it, would enforce the law. But the problem is we only hold the agreements and licenses for, I don't know, probably 15 to 20 large landowners in the state. So when it comes to things that are not on those or on state rail beds like our property, it's mostly up to the local clubs, and then we have our trails coordinators get involved if we start hearing that there's issues to try and help resolve it with them, and then if not, then the warden service and whatever. So it's not really super cut and dry, because we want the ATV trails to be closed when it's detrimental to the
Right.
earth, and then we want them to be open when it's ready for them to ride. So because we'll get complaints either way.
One of the things that we've said is that most of the ATV clubs are pretty respectful of the landowners because they know that having continued
Right.
access depends on it. But then there are the road riders, and they come out at a time when nobody expects them, and zoom through, and nobody knows who it was unless you've got a trail camera out there. And if you can't
Right.
catch them, how do you prosecute them?
You don't.
Well, that's where the trail cams and different things like that are really helpful. I don't know, Chris, you have to have a trail cam on your property pretty much, like to catch
Well,
someone
the
on it?
staff-
How does that work
so-
in court?
Yeah, basically, we like to be the ones that put the cameras out a lot of times because we can testify to it, but we can call landowner in and they can testify to what they have out there if we have evidence that they have. But it's going to draw them into court, which is usually the thing that a landowner doesn't want to do. They want to be
Right.
left out of it, so that's why we try to do it. The problem is, in a lot of situations, like the way the statute is, we have to have landowner permission in order to put game cameras up on people's property. So sometimes that's not a problem because it's the actual landowner that calls us, but sometimes it may be in a butter that doesn't like it on there, and then the person up the road doesn't mind, so they're like, yeah, but where you want to get them. So it ebbs and flows. But yeah, to answer your question, like we use them to the best of our ability because we use live cameras and everything like that also to try and catch people. So
I guess just to clarify, I don't know, maybe Heather, you're the best one to do it for me, but can you just sum up Mile High View what we are trying to do here, like with this subcommittee?
So I think with this subcommittee, the reason why I think it was to decide what is the recommendation for who should be able to give access on these abandoned and discontinued roads for ATVs and snowmobiles. I don't think people have as many problems with snowmobiles, except for right now. I know in Winthrop, we just had a big situation in Maranacook Lake where they went up the wrong side of a house, which then they admitted they were wrong and took responsibility for it. I mean, obviously, I think a lot of it's the ATV is not respectful of people's property, and they're just, I don't think it's all ATVs. I think some of them are the big trucks. They go in with the big mudding wheels and they think it's super fun to tear up roads, not realizing the cost, I think, to the individual person. And so, it comes down to that contentious thing that Roberta faces, I think, the most on her road, that the town doesn't want to help. They don't want to listen, but they want everybody to have that access. And then if somebody goes in, and I know in the, maybe not so bad now, but I know in the early stages, some of the pictures and stuff that she shared, stories she shared, is a lot of damage to her road. And her and David were out thousands of dollars to replace that at a time when they didn't have the money to be able to do that. And that's a huge burden in the town, continues. It seemed like it dismissed, I think, like their concerns, and that leads to a lot of anger. I mean, I think it's the disrespect of the roads. I mean, I think is the biggest thing that people are, not able to get money from the town. So then should the town have the authority to be able to say, yes, you can use these roads as an ATV or a snowmobile, or no? And I think even if we solve the thing for the ATV, you still have the big muddy trucks, which is why we said, some of these roads maybe should be closed to through traffic unless you live on the road. And we put that into the law. But I think it comes down, honestly, I think a lot of this just comes down to people just needing to respect other people's property. And if you're going to use a road, you need to have respect for it as if it's the highway. Like, you don't go down the highway and, well, I mean, I guess some teenagers do, like burn tracks or whatever on the highway and do your spinnies and stuff.
Right.
Because it's expensive. I mean, we live in Maine. Not a lot of people have a lot of money. You buy property on these abandoned, discontinued roads because it's affordable. and then you've got a town saying, yes, you can have access on it. And then they go and they destroy your access to your house and you got to walk miles in the mud to get into your house. I don't think that feels like you're being taken care of as a citizen or a citizen of the town. So we can start looking at right now, I think as the law stands, it's pretty clear it's the towns who have the authority to say who can be on these public easements. And it might be worth it to have the town designate it as, if it is an ATV or a snowmobile trail, because then at least the town or the people maybe who live on that road, maybe they can get assistance to maintain the road from the state or, even the town. But I am not as familiar with the process for doing that, because I think that's the biggest issue is from sitting through 3 years of listening to everything, I honestly seems to me that the biggest thing is the respect, and the damaging of the road, and that people have to pay for it out of their own pocket. Somebody did that on, like a highway, the state would go after them and they would fix the road. They're not going to leave it damaged. I don't know. Did I answer your question? I feel like I kind of went off on a tangent, Matt. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Sorry.
Well, I know, because we're looking at we're trying to figure out how to solve like who can grant access to like
Yes.
recreational vehicles. And so you kind of just said that in law, it sounds like the town can.
I mean, looking at it from a high place, that's what I think is it's the town, because right now, right, Chris, like it's the town who's saying this is a public easement.
Well,
and
the problem is that, yeah, they can say that there's an easement for the public, but it doesn't specify as to what type of use. And traditional use would be non-motorized, like no ATVs, no snowmobiles, because like Roberta said in 2003, like that was when like ATVs were really starting to boom. That's when we had the ATV task force come about. So I think that's the problem, is we've run out of, like, it's just not up to date, I guess would be the best way of
So
putting
we
it.
really just need to try, and maybe it's not an unfunded mandate, but we just need to see if we can push towns to like clarify whether, right. Like if there is, and maybe that's one first step that could be good, is like if they have roads that they know they have public easements on, to clarify just whether those
Roads
like
and
recreational vehicles are allowed.
And it might help.
Is that going to be so hard? Are we going to get in trouble by MMA or?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's a fair thing. I mean, I think the only thing is, honestly, I think it would help the town do inventory too, because they'll have to dive into whether or not, like, what type of easement is it really? Was the road discontinued? Was it abandoned? When was it abandoned and discontinued? And then that, I think, is where they might run into some issues of money. But at some point, I'm like, you need to designate what it's for. I mean,
well, at some point, towns need to do their job.
I agree with you.
And I worked for towns for 15 years, so I can actually say that, because
what
I was a department head, and we were supposed to take care of our taxpayers and do what we were supposed to do for our taxpayers. So,
and what do you guys think that would help? Like if it's designated by the town, it would force the town into doing it, but it would be, I don't think you would run up under the unfunded mandate. Do you guys? I mean,
it would help us from an enforcement perspective, because we could say definitely the town said that this is an ATV trail. So if the problem is that, like, and I want to see like what Roberta's thoughts would be, like, the pulse from her side, because then you're going to have people that are on those, and the town's going to say, we brought it to a vote. It's an ATV or snowmobile trail. And like, are these people going to like lose it when it comes to this? Because that could be a change. It might not be an ATV snowmobile trail, but it might be like, oh, you know what? That's going to bring money to my town. If we have that trail system there. I think it's great from our perspective, because we see that already, where we have landowners call in and they say, oh, the town doesn't know what they're talking about. They don't know anything about this road, but they open it up. And we're sitting there like, all right, like, well, let's start to dig into it and see. But then that was the town manager 15 years ago that said that they could have a snowmobile trail there, and it still continued. So it would clarify things for us from our perspective.
Okay. How do you feel about that as a suggestion?
Yeah, a few things that enter into this. One is back the first time we tried to get the inventories through, and the MMA complained about, oh, we don't even know where the records are. one of the legislators on the committee, I think it was before the Judiciary Committee at that time, one of the legislators said, wait a minute, towns are supposed to have been keeping track of these records all along. So if you
Right.
don't know where they are, don't blame us. You're supposed to have that on file.
I agree wholeheartedly.
And then several years later, there was an attorney for MMA who wrote a piece for MMA's newsletter saying that inventories are extremely valuable for a town and highly recommending that towns do inventories. So it hasn't always been MMA opposing the inventories. I think it's a question of having proper incentives or finding ways to keep the costs under control. And as I said, start by just listing where the records are. And
Right.
then
Do you think those people who live on abandoned, discontinued roads, because you deal with them the most. I only get a few calls here and there that sometimes you forward to me. Do you feel that those people, if the town said on this public easement, yes, it's going to be an ATV trail, we're going to allow it to be an ATV trail, but, you know, like we'll file with, you know, BPL and we'll have funds coming in to maintain the road. How do you feel like people would feel about that, I guess? Do you think there'd be a lot of pushback? I mean, they're noisy, they make damage. I mean, what do you think, Roberta? Because you're the closest to everybody, I think, on this.
There's definitely going to be some pushback.
Okay.
And a lot of it is because of the perception that there's going to be disrespectful use of these roads. I know there was one town that I ran across where they mentioned that when they first agreed to having ATV trails, there was a lot of resistance to it. But once the people found out that most of the riders were respectful, they were okay with it.
I guess on the flip of that, I'm thinking to myself, maybe there's some towns that would it would give us an end all that the road would be no access to ATVs or snowmobiles or whatever. And then we could actually do some enforcement on there. So it may,
I think it's going to go both ways, you know,
Right.
like we're going to do
That's what I'm-
something. There's going to be
Right.
some things that happen that none of us like, and there's going to be some things that happen that everybody loves, you know.
Right.
So but you know, it's kind of like to the point of Miss Mantor, yeah, Mantor. Sorry, you know, mentioning about how she's got a lot of great records of like data points of all the abandoned roads, but you know, doesn't necessarily want to give them out because you don't want people to like see them. But at some point, we have to, you know, it's one of those like it may hurt either way, you know, like holding it may hurt or giving it out may hurt in a way, but you know, nothing's really going to get fixed until it's out there. So
Remember, Roberta,
One thing that I can do is I can go through those records that I have where people have complained about ATVs and look up on each one whether I have a definitive answer on whether those were discontinued roads or not.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful, Roberta, too.
I do
At some
think
point, I think we should be able to walk into a town office and say, is this a ATV recreational trail or not? It
Right.
should be that
Yeah.
simple.
right. It should be that simple. Like
We've been saying for years that each town should have a big map on the wall like the ones the DOT has when they come out and go through the LRAP funding records. Just post it on the wall and have all the roads labeled so you know which ones are discontinued, which ones are abandoned, which ones are ATV trails, which
So
ones are
when one
snowmobile trails.
Board of Selectmen disappears and the new one
Yeah,
comes in.
so
Yeah.
when the administration changes, you don't have somebody who says, oh, we never maintained that road when
I can
actually
guarantee you,
this road commissioner
can-
did.
I can almost guarantee you every public works director for every town has a huge map of every road in their town on their wall, because everyone I've ever walked into has a map on their wall of every road in their town. So
We've seen ones where they may have the map, but they don't have everything clearly labeled.
yeah,
So what do you guys think? Do you guys think doing this recommendation, saying, you know, we recommend that there be a notification or this thing for the town that they have to designate what the public easement is if they're going to use it?
I like that, Heather.
And go from there, and we can just recommend it to the commission. I mean, I'm not sure how to get around the access part. I will talk to Amanda about it and see, you know, if we can deep dive. But I feel like, and maybe I'm wrong. I can check in with Jim too, because he was kind of close on this issue and see what he thinks. But I think from my memory, he was saying the problem is it lies with the towns, unfortunately, right now. So maybe forcing the towns to say what the public easement is, which I know, Roberta, you've said several times that it would be helpful for that too. It kind of forces them into doing due diligence and kind of getting them maybe where we want them. And we might get pushed back. We might not make it all the way through to the recommendation in January, but we could put it before the commission and talk to them about it.
Yeah, I think the key to it is going to be finding a way that they have some choices, so they can't say it's a mandate. So, maybe provide some kind of incentive if they'll do it. Maybe, like I said, report it if you've already done it or if you do it in the future. And maybe if some towns see that other towns have done it and have done it successfully with minimal cost and have seen the benefits of it, then maybe other towns will join in.
Can we say that if they don't work on it, Roberta is going to show up at your office?
The one other pushback that I can really see you getting is, like somebody mentioned, people who moved up here during COVID and newcomers, and particularly one class of people that I'm intimately familiar with is veterans who have PTSD, who thought they were moving out into the boonies where they wouldn't have to interact with anybody. They could just have peace and quiet. And they get in there, they fix up the road enough so they can get in. And as soon as they fix the road, everybody starts using it. And then all the controversy erupts. And that's the last thing they need. They tried to get peace and quiet. And they deserve to have peace and quiet. People who are running away from COVID,
That's such a small window compared to what you've dealt with for 30 plus years, though. The COVID 5 years out, that seems like, hey, things have changed since then. We need to implement a program that will prevent this from going ahead deeper and deeper.
yeah, PTSD lasts forever. So
No, I understand that. I'm not taking significance away from that, but
no, I'm agreeing with you that COVID is a temporary problem.
yeah.
I think that sometimes, and John and Matt can probably talk to this better than I can, but I know from my experience of working with landowners and stuff like that, they have other issues. Like sometimes we can have a workaround so that we can get it further away from them in some aspects. Like that's usually we try to do that.
Yeah, that's one thing I've advocated for too, is that if you object to the trail going right down the road right in front of your house, if you've got a big enough piece of property, can you grant us a way around it? I did have somebody who did that.
Yep.
He made a new trail around the backside of his property. And there were people who didn't want to accept that. They still wanted to use the road because they had always used the road. And unfortunately, the road was pretty badly torn up.
I think we have the answer because Peter Coughlin's got the map viewer that displays for public roads. Let's have one for discontinued roads. And
Well,
the towns need to hold of it.
I agree with you. DOT doesn't want to do it though. We had that discussion with DOT.
I agree, but
So
the
it has to come
concept of
from
having
the
an inventory
commission.
solves the problem.
Yeah. I mean, I think it'd be a good step to say you're going to have to designate what the public easements are for. I think it's kind of innocuous, but it also is kind of like, okay, you want this public easement. And Roberta, you had mentioned this before. You should have to say what the use is because it helps with enforcement. It helps with public safety, I think. And that would be the things that I would bring up. I mean, it sounds to me from talking with everybody too, the legality probably should, who can be on the road should be left up to the homeowners on that road. But if they're saying the town owns the public easement and it's a state, public easement belongs to the town, then they have the authority to do it.
I agree. I mean, if the town wants to maintain a public easement or a right to go up there, then they should determine what that is. And if they don't, they should give it up. And it should go to the landowners that are abut them. But that's the problem is they've just kicked that can down the road and they don't but I think that this might, if we did give them this recommendation, it might force them into doing their records a little bit better.
I mean, we can think about it and we can meet up in a month if you guys want and see if anybody's come out with any other ideas. And then we can start working on putting together a presentation. We've come up with this one idea. And I think the sample questionnaire is the other thing. And I can send you guys that too and see if you guys want to, I'd sent it out last year. It hasn't changed, but I can send you for the questionnaire. You can take a look at it, see if there's anything else that you think the town she maybe answered, but it was pretty straightforward. It was just, are you aware of if you have these roads in your, do you know what I mean? It was more to get like the numbers, not like what roads are what, just more to kind of put them on notice, like, do you have this somewhere?
I wonder if it'd be interesting to put on there, like if they allow recreational vehicles on those easements now, because there's probably nothing that says it, but there's towns that are allowing it. Just out of curiosity.
I mean, I'm not opposed to putting that on there.
Yeah, that's a good
On
point.
the public easements, that are, but yeah, I can just put public easements, and then I can put public easements that are discontinued / abandoned. So that way,
this kind of reminds me of when a town is getting reassessed. Like a third of people's property values are going to go up and they're going to be really angry. A third of people's property values are going to go down and they're going to be okay. And then a third of the people's prices are going to like stay the same. So, it's like, I think that's what's going to happen with like us trying to do this, is that I think it's important for the future. So that way it clears things up. But you're probably going to have, some people who are like, well, the town just said that this is now allowed on here and I didn't want it, but the decision's at least made. So that's good in a way, and then others are probably going to go the other way and be happy about it. But I think it's probably the best.
Yeah. And I'm also hoping, like, if it's a recommendation and the legislature takes it up and the towns have to do it, then the people have to vote. At least it gives everybody time to argue back and forth and kind of have it out, like, what is the purpose of that public easement? Whereas right now, I don't think there's any discussion going on, right? In any of the towns, Roberta, is there?
And one thing I would like to see is if there was some way that we could provide mediation services for some of these situations, because otherwise things can get argumentative. And like I just went to the hearing on that stipulated judgment in the town of Freedom, and it was a setup. I mean, one of the selectmen was obviously biased towards one side, and the people who were disrespectful were loud. And as a result, people who were respectful, I think in a lot of cases, stayed away from the meeting because they didn't want to be in that toxic atmosphere.
That's
So
usually how it goes.
of course you can tell which way the vote went.
You don't get usually reasonable people that show up. You get angry people that show
I don't
up.
think you've had it's been like that in the legislature this year too. So it's
I'm really glad we haven't had to go in front of them for anything this year. It's been nice.
oh God.
I've had to go every week for the past 8 weeks.
I know. I
almost,
saw your last thing. I was watching it and I felt so bad for you. I was like, poor Matt.
You were right from in the bad into the fire, didn't you?
Right.
One other
It's good
thing,
for me.
Matt, I don't know if you're familiar with this. I think Chris is at least somewhat familiar with it, and maybe John, you are too. On the DOT map viewer, do you know where to find the county discontinued roads? Because that takes care of, it doesn't tell you anything about the roads the town is discontinued, but it tells you which ones the county is discontinued. And what you do is you go to the DOT map viewer, and where it says layers, you type in, you go to where it says add layer, and you type in RIG. And one of the options that will give you is right-of-way layouts. There are two that start with RIG. You can click on both of them if you want. But then it will light up all the county roads and former county roads in green. And the ones that are no longer maintained are likely to be discontinued in one way or another. But if you put your cursor on the road and click on it, a bar comes up on the left-hand side that tells you when the road was laid out. And if there's a code number with a D after it, that means the county discontinued it. And you can get in touch with the DOT. They'll give you a copy of the discontinuance, and you can look at and see whether it says any easement was retained or not. In most cases, there were no easements retained because the county law didn't actually have a provision that said you could do that. So the ones that say there's an easement, there could be some dispute over that. But if it says there was no easement and you can bring up the discontinuance and read what it says, then that was discontinued with no easement, end of story. So that would take a good chunk of them out of the question.
So do you, Matt and Chris, do you guys have a map of the ATV and snowmobile trails so that like, I know not so much for snowmobiles, but for the ATVs, like if they're off the trail and they can be cited? Or is it like, is it throughout the whole state, like that the wardens have where they can be like, okay, you violated this, we're ticketing you or something? Or is it you just kind of still guessing?
Typically, it's our guys in the field. I'll let Matt talk about the mapping stuff, but our guys in the
Okay.
field are kind of just like familiar with their area, so they know where the trails are. They've ridden all,
Okay.
and then obviously like complaint driven. But then Matt's got the mapping stuff.
We do have maps for the whole state's trail system. We don't really publish them. We've had some like legal issues with that, with privacy and stuff. So we're still trying to figure all that stuff out. But I know one of the things that we've been working on with the warden service is getting our map viewer for them. So that way, because our staff and clubs will notify us when there's like a temporary closure or seasonal closure, or there was a reroute because there's a logging operation, or it's a weekends only trail because of work that's going on. And that would be like, we've talked with the warden service about getting up on that a little bit, so they can kind of just, when they're out there, they can pull the app up on their phone, see exactly where it is. They can click on it and it'll tell them closed trail, open trail. I mean, you can see it with like colors and stuff anyway, but that's something that we've been like talking about and working on a little bit here. So it's a little bit easier for them to identify in the field.
This is a deep dive too, but like technology is advancing, and like these ATVs and snowmobiles are running, like John's probably running GPS on his, and Can-Am, like Polaris, they have their own apps and stuff. And we ran into an issue last year with Polaris, and it documents, it takes a cookie crumb trail of these ATVs when they're out riding the trails. But I had one guy that followed a trail system that wasn't an actual trail, and he left a cookie crumb trail, so other people started following it. So the technologies, we're trying to catch up with technology, and it's just the
user data is becoming, or crowdsourced data, I guess it's kind of called, is becoming really popular and troublesome, because our trail system, we map ourselves with our staff or with the ATV club. But then what ends up happening is all these machines that have GPS on them go wherever they want, or maybe it's a local person and it's not really a real designated trail, but it ends up that it might end up on Polaris Ride Command's app, because it's kind of a user data. But they've been working pretty well with us. We've been working pretty well with Polaris to like share data a little bit to clear up what issues we think they have and go out and kind of correct it if we can.
It's a double-edged sword, because we can use it to our advantage to put them into the areas where they're supposed to be and not where they're disallowed. But unfortunately, we're fine.
I'll share with you just a bit more on that. The Maine Snowmobile Association just this year has instigated an app that you purchase for $5, and we've been explicitly asking each club to submit the tracks for this current season. Obviously, all clubs haven't, because there's just so much data to collect. But most of our tracks are this season's tracks, because we had snow statewide. And you can see immediately if you're on trail or if you're off trail by where your location is. It's right on your phone. It's extremely helpful. This all came about, as Matt mentioned, about third-party tracks that were submitted, and they're 6, 7, 8 years old, and now the trail's changed, and now clearly a rider following a track is not where they should be. So I think that's going to be coming with ATV side as well, and be much more accurate, much more quicker than it ever has been. I'm one of the administrators, and I loaded trails all season long from clubs that sent them in, and it's pretty exciting to see it be so current. And those are the boots on the ground in each town that have made their tracks, supplying the information. I went with Matt's crew, and they're logging their own database similar to ours to be accurate. So it's pretty neat.
All I know is from this meeting, I learned that I am super bummed that working for the town for 15 years, all I had to do was say it was an unfunded mandate for me to get out of doing stuff.
You done less work. You did too much.
I mean, I wish I could say that. I still work for taxpayers now, but I can't say that. And people,
No, you definitely
ask
cannot.
me to do stuff. I gotta just work extra to make it happen. But
My
Yeah.
famous line I learned from Chandler Woodcock, who was our last commissioner before the current commissioner, was,
Farmington resident as well.
yes, it's on the table. That's what he would say when everyone would have a suggestion. It's on the table. And I was like, are you serious?
If you want to know what an unfunded mandate is, try maintaining a public road for 50 years.
Yeah.
Sure.
So should we meet in a month and I'll send you guys the questionnaire that we're going to send to the towns and see if there's any other questions you guys would like to see added to it. I think we're trying to keep it small and streamlined, but I think adding that one question that you guys had suggested might be good to get that down, to see if they are ATV trails and snowmobile trails on these public and discontinued roads that they're allowing access to. And we can talk maybe more about, the wording around this. And then, and see where that goes. And and Amanda wasn't here today, Amanda Egan, so she wasn't able to give us her perspective. So she might have a different perspective. But is there anything you guys think I'm leaving out or anything else you want to cover in this?
No, I'll try to come up with a list of which of
Okay, Roberta.
those ATV problem roads are discontinued roads.
Yeah, I mean, if you send those to us, I think that will be good. And, think about it. And then I'll send out a doodle poll, what it's called, for like next month. And we can just, schedule something. I think it'd be pretty quick to just agree to those two things. And then when we have the commission meeting, we can just kind of run them through the two ideas that we have, or there's more, because this was the first time we really talked about anything. And you guys might come up with other things now.
Yeah. The
Does
only
that
thing
work?
I would request is next meeting for somebody to remember where we're at. So that way you can give like a quick refresher on what we're doing, because a month from now, I probably won't remember where we're at. But,
Well, I can do that. And I also can type up minutes for this meeting and send
Yeah,
them to you
okay.
if you would like that. I usually do it for the subcommittee members. So, and then I submit those at the end of the year anyway to the legislature, but I'll do that for you.
Sweet.
I'll make sure you guys get it. Okay.
We're trying our
All right,
damnedest, Roberta, to keep the oversized off the trails, but
I saw you guys did a good job.
oh my God, this is a binder of like those are just 2026 registration.
Man.
Crazy.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Thank
All right.
you. Have a good rest of the
Thank you all.
afternoon.
Thank you guys. Have a good day.